Welcome back, folks. Today, the topic of interest is 8 reasons why people fail, part 4. So, if you're new to the series, welcome. And we've been covering the most common reasons why people fail and how to address and overcome these things. So, this is what we've covered so far in the first 3 parts. So, in part 1, we talked about being a perfectionist. Part 2, we talked about making excuses. Yesterday, we talked about allowing yourself to be distracted. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about applying what you know. So, the level of application in a person's life. Now, the 2 things that have to be highlighted in this video, the first thing that we have to address is the level of the intellect, the level of thinking a person has. Everything starts off with thinking. Thinking is everything. So I've done a little crummy little diagram. I don't know if you can see my writing of how an individual is formed, what makes up a person. So everything starts off with thinking. So the level of thinking a person has, what they continuously feed themselves. What you continuously feed yourself and ruminate and think about forms the beliefs that you have. So what you believe is possible for you, what you believe is possible for the world, and what you believe normally influences the actions that you take, right? The actions that you take form the habits that you have. The habits that you have form your personality, or in other words, your personal reality. So the reality that you live in right now is compounded from the level of thinking you've had up until this point. So Einstein had a fantastic quote that said that you can't solve the problems in your life right now with the same level of thinking that created them. So your thinking has to transcend where you're at right now. Your thinking has to line up with where you want to be. So ironically, before I wanted to shoot this video, I was on Insta and I was going through the reels and I came across a little interview with Mike Tyson. So some guy was talking to Mike. So he's like, Mike, when did you know that you were going to be a champion? Is what he asked him. And then Mike responded, he went, I knew from the beginning. He went, I always was a champion. I always thought like it and I lived like it. I behaved like it. So I did a little bit of research. I thought, So I looked through Mike Tyson's autobiography. And one thing that I didn't realize is that he used to live with his trainer. So his trainer was called Cus. So Cus is like a small Italian guy who had a passion for boxing. And what Cus did was when Mike was 15 years old, he took him to a hypnotherapist. So what the hypnotherapist did is he trained Mike to get himself into a hypnotic trance. And what Cus would do on a consistent basis is he'd relay suggestions to Mike. So what we'd be saying to Mike is be like, Mike, you're a scourge from God. You're the greatest boxer of all time. Nobody can stop you. You have a mean right hand. You throw punches with bad intentions. He's drumming this into Mike consistently, specific things, non-specific things. All of these things are going into Mike's head. Mike's training like a savage at this point. Then it comes to the point where he starts fighting and he's knocking people out. And he's not surprised because he believed it. He was so convinced, he was so sure, right? That's the first level, the thinking, what you're feeding yourself consistently. So if you're watching videos like mine, you're doing fantastic. If you're reading books, you're doing fantastic. That's the first half of it. The second half of it is now the level of application where you start putting things in place and forming habits that are going to align with where you want to be. Now, I can understand that when it comes to forming habits, or it comes to the point where you're making New Year's resolutions, there's a little bit of resistance towards it, because I know many people, myself included, have had experiences where you've made a New Year's resolution and then you've not followed through with it. So you think, why bother making New Year's resolution? Because even if I do it, will I really follow through with it? Unlikely. I want to encourage you that you can get disciplined extremely quickly. You just need the right parameters in place. So for many of you, you just need a little bit of accountability. That's all, a little bit of accountability. So if you can, I'd advise you hire yourself a coach. I'm a coach. But if you're in a position where you cannot do that, the next best thing that I feel like is effective and will get you results quickly is creating what I call severe consequences for failure. So why I say severe consequences for failure is because motivation in an individual comes in 2 forms. The 2 types of motivation a person can have. So you've got the pull type of motivation where you're excited by something and you're thinking, yes, I want to go for it. This is the thing that I want. I'm excited to pursue it. And then there's a darker form of motivation, which is the push motivation, where you're running away from something, where you're thinking pain is looming. I gotta run away. Like the dogs are chomping at my behind. So I remember give you guys a personal example. Some of you guys were there when this was happening. So this was 2 years ago. So once again, it goes back to that mentor that I had with Feroz. So there's a time where I was speaking to him and I told him I feel like the next thing that I need to do to progress is I need to discipline myself to wake up at 5 a.m. on a consistent basis. So you went, okay, cool. This is what you want to do. You went, okay, so how convinced are you that you'll be able to do it? And I told him, I'm 95% sure that I'll be able to do it. So Feroz pauses and then he goes, 95%. What about the other 5? And there was me flustered. I couldn't give him an answer to that. I was just like, I don't know. And he went, listen, I'll make you a deal. So we made an agreement. He said, listen, how about this? If you fail to wake up at 5 a.m. consistently and you fail to drop me a message in the morning in the chat to let me know that you're awake and you're doing what you need to do, I will take £1,000 out of your account. So yeah, he had my account details at the time. I will take £1,000 out of your account. Now, if you know Josh loves the guap and the gouda, I was not about to let go of that cash money. I think, no. And then he said also as well, you're going to let your Instagram know. So I came onto Instagram and I told everybody, I said, yo, guys, I'm going to be waking up at 5 a.m. consistently. If I fail to do that and you don't see an Instagram story post from me with me up at 5 a.m., I will transfer £20 to whoever calls me out on it. So some of you guys were wicked individuals. Some of you were setting alarms just to wake up at 5 a.m. to see if I woke up. Yeah, so some of you were wicked individuals, but I woke up. So going back to that point where I talked about what forms an individual, that influenced the level of my thinking. So at that time I thought, I am waking up at 5 a.m. no matter what. There ain't no way they're taking money from me. So I had the beliefs. I was fully convinced that I was going to do it. The belief resulted in the action. So I took the action of waking up at 5 a.m. That formed the habit of waking up at 5 a.m. consistently. That became me. That became my personality, my personal reality. I became a morning person because I had severe consequences in place to hold me accountable long enough for it to form a habit within me. Now that's what some of you guys will need to do for yourself. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with money, but you can cut a deal with like your flatmate or somebody that you live with, a family member. We can say like, if I fail to practice my guitar today, then I will run a marathon or whatever, or I will do this, something that's unpleasant to you. Make it public so people will hold you accountable, because people will be happy to hold you accountable if you put something out there like that. So that's the idea for today. So one, feed yourself the right stuff, form the right habits if you need to get yourself some form of accountability through severe consequences for failure. That's the video of the day. Done.